Jasmine Washington freezes in the jet cabin aisle as the red-faced businessman stands pointing at her. "Get off this plane! Your kind doesn't belong here!" She takes a measured breath, approaches him slowly, leans in close, and whispers, "I own this jet, sir. And you've just lost your seat." Before we dive into this incredible story of prejudice and power, where are you watching from today? If this opening caught your attention, hit that like button and subscribe to follow more stories of triumph against discrimination. Trust me, you won't want to miss how Jasmine handles what happens next. The day began like any other for Jasmine Washington. At 5:30 a.m., her alarm chimed softly in her spacious Atlanta penthouse. The city lights twinkled through floor-to-ceiling windows as she slipped out of bed, already mentally preparing for the day ahead. At 38, the CEO of Phoenix Innovations had built her tech empire from nothing, and maintaining it required discipline most people couldn't imagine. Her morning workout was efficient 30 minutes on the treadmill while simultaneously reviewing quarterly reports on her tablet. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she increased the incline, pushing herself just as she pushed her company always forward, always upward. After a quick shower, Jasmine stood before her expansive closet eyes, scanning the designer labels. Her hand hovered over a striking red power suit before deliberately selecting a simple black dress instead. She added minimal jewelry, small diamond studs, and her mother's vintage watch. The decision wasn't about fashion, it was strategy. Years of experience had taught her that in the predominantly white male tech world, standing out too much could be a liability. Better to let her intellect make the first impression. "Understated elegance," she murmured to herself. "Let them underestimate you." Her phone rang just as she was pouring her first cup of coffee. The screen lit up with her assistant's name. "Morning, Terrell," she answered, voice crisp and clear. "Morning, Miss Washington. Just confirming today's schedule before you head out. The investment meeting at Stratton Financial in New York is still set for 2 p.m. Their entire board will be present, including Raymond Keller." Jasmine frowned slightly at the name. Raymond Keller, executive vice president at Stratton, had a reputation for being difficult, old money, old ideas. "Do we have the latest numbers from R&D on the quantum encryption project? That's what will really make an impression on Stratton." "Already loaded onto your secure tablet along with the market projection slides you requested," Terrell replied. "Perfect." She took a sip of coffee, mentally rehearsing her pitch. Phoenix Innovations was on the verge of revolutionizing data security, and Stratton's investment would accelerate the timeline significantly. "One more thing," Terrell added. "There's a scheduling issue with your commercial flight. Mechanical delays, and they're not sure when it will be resolved." Jasmine glanced at her watch. This meeting wasn't one she could afford to miss or postpone. After a moment's consideration, she made the decision. "Call Marcus. Have him prep the jet. I usually avoid using it for day trips, but this meeting is too important." She rarely used her private Gulfstream G650 for short domestic flights. It attracted attention, and Jasmine preferred to move through the world quietly when possible. But today's circumstances demanded an exception. While finishing her coffee, Jasmine's mind drifted to a childhood memory. Her father standing in their modest living room in South Atlanta, kneeling to eye level with 10-year-old Jasmine after she'd come home crying about a teacher who'd ignored her raised hand for an entire class. "Baby girl, listen to me," he'd said, his voice gentle but firm. "This world isn't always fair to people who look like us. Sometimes they won't call on you, even when you have all the right answers. But that doesn't mean you stop raising your hand. You raise it higher. You speak up louder. And when they finally give you the floor, you make sure every word that comes out of your mouth is so brilliant, they'll never ignore you again." The memory straightened her spine and lifted her chin. At Phoenix Innovations, she'd built a company culture where everyone's hand got called on, where brilliance was the only currency that mattered. And today, she would secure the funding to expand that vision further. Marcus called back within minutes, confirming the jet would be ready by the time she arrived at the private airfield. Jasmine chose to drive herself in her 3-year-old Audi, rather than the Bentley or Aston Martin also parked in her garage. Again, a deliberate choice. Flash didn't impress the people she needed to impress. The drive to the private section of Hartsfield-Jackson took 30 minutes. Jasmine used the time to listen to the morning financial news, catching any last-minute developments that might impact her presentation. Today would be another exercise in navigating spaces not designed for her, proving herself in rooms where her presence was still considered an anomaly. But then again, that's what she'd been doing her entire life. 1,400 miles north, Raymond Keller woke to the sound of his housemaid gently knocking on the mahogany door of the master bedroom in his Greenwich, Connecticut estate. "Mr. Keller, it's 7:00 a.m., she announced softly. Raymond grunted acknowledgement from beneath Egyptian cotton sheets. At 56, the executive vice president of Stratton Financial Group considered himself the backbone of the company despite technically answering to a CEO and board. 3 generations of Kellers had held positions at Stratton, and Raymond wore this legacy like an invisible crown. The housemaid had already drawn his bath and laid out his clothing: a charcoal Tom Ford suit, crisp white shirt, and a red power tie. The smell of breakfast wafted up from downstairs eggs Benedict prepared precisely as he demanded, with the hollandaise sauce containing exactly the right amount of lemon juice. As Raymond ascended the grand staircase, his phone buzzed. Crawford Stratton's chief investment officer was calling. "Crawford, what's so important at this ungodly hour?" Raymond barked into the phone, though he'd been awake for 30 minutes already. He enjoyed making people feel like they were inconveniencing him. It reinforced his sense of importance. "Just wanted to touch base about the Phoenix Innovations meeting this afternoon," Crawford replied, unfazed by Raymond's tone after years of working together. "Their numbers are impressive. The quantum encryption technology could revolutionize financial data security. If it works as advertised, we should be aggressive with the offer." Raymond scoffed, settling into the head chair at his dining table as the housemaid silently served his breakfast. "If it works as advertised. That's a big if, Crawford. I've seen the file on this Washington woman. Came from nothing, no family connections, community college education before transferring to MIT. Suspicious, meteoric rise, if you ask me. Her patents speak for themselves," Crawford countered, "and her company culture is exceptional employee retention rate of 96%, unheard of in tech." Raymond cut into his eggs with surgical precision. "Culture is a luxury, Crawford. We're investing in technology, not kumbaya sessions. I've been in this business since you were in diapers. These overnight success stories often have hidden flaws." After finishing the call, Raymond's wife Victoria glided into the dining room in her silk robe, hair already perfectly styled despite the early hour. "Big meeting in New York today?" she asked, taking a small portion of fruit from the spread. "Some tech company looking for investment. Phoenix something." "Oh, Phoenix Innovations. I just read about their CEO in Business Weekly, Jasmine Washington. They say she's brilliant. Developed some encryption algorithm that even government agencies can't crack." Raymond's expression soured. "Since when do you follow tech companies?" Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Since my investment group started making excellent returns on them. You might be surprised to know this Washington woman built her company without a single round of traditional venture capital. She's maintained controlling interest while growing by over 300% in 5 years. Well, we'll see about that. These diversity success stories often look better in magazine profiles than they do under proper financial scrutiny." Victoria's face fell slightly. After 23 years of marriage, her husband's thinly veiled prejudices still disappointed her. "Raymond, please tell me you're going to evaluate this company on its merits and not on who runs it." "Of course I will," he said dismissively, checking his watch. "I need to go. The company jet is waiting, and I'm sharing it with some of the board members and that insufferable tech journalist from Digital Frontiers, Alicia something." Raymond's driver was 2 minutes late, prompting a stern lecture about punctuality and respect. The drive to the private airfield was spent barking orders to his assistant over the phone, demanding last-minute changes to meeting schedules, and berating a junior analyst for a minor error in a report. By the time he arrived at the Atlantic Aviation Terminal at the private airfield, Raymond was already in a foul mood. The sight of a well-dressed black woman sitting quietly in the exclusive lounge area did nothing to improve it. Something about her seemed vaguely familiar. Perhaps she was someone's assistant or a flight attendant waiting between shifts. Raymond approached the check-in counter voice, deliberately loud enough to draw attention. Raymond Keller, Executive Vice President, Stratton Financial Group. I believe you're expecting me for the New York flight. The attendant immediately straightened. Yes, Mr. Keller. We've been expecting you. The Stratton jet is being prepared now. Would you care for some refreshments while you wait? Scotch. Neat. The Macallan 25 if you have it, he replied, not bothering to thank her. As he took his drink to a leather armchair, Raymond noticed the black woman was on a phone call speaking in hushed, authoritative tones about technical specifications and market projections. Surely she couldn't be one of the passengers. He'd been told the flight would only include Stratton executives, that young venture capitalist Derek Foster who'd been making waves lately, and the journalist. Raymond pulled out his phone and fired off a text to his assistant. Check who else is scheduled on the Stratton jet to LaGuardia today. There's an unknown woman in the lounge. The reply came quickly. Manifest shows Stratton executives: U. Crawford Dawson, Derek Foster, Elevation Capital, Alicia Chen, Digital Frontiers, and Tyler Wilson, your protege. Also, the aircraft owner has exercised their contract right to travel on the flight. Raymond frowned. Stratton didn't own this particular jet. They had a long-term charter agreement with some holding company. He'd never paid attention to the details that was for underlings to handle. The unknown woman finished her call, and Raymond studied her more carefully. There was a quiet confidence in her posture that irritated him. People who hadn't earned their position always tried to fake that confidence, he thought. He'd made his career spotting such imposters. Raymond turned as Derek Foster entered the lounge, immediately recognizing the 30-something venture capitalist whose fund had been making headlines. Derek, good to see you, Raymond called, extending his hand. Glad to have you joining us for this dog and pony show this afternoon. Derek shook his hand firmly. Raymond, looking forward to it. Phoenix Innovations is doing remarkable things in quantum encryption. We'll see, Raymond said dismissively. Between us, I'm skeptical. These trendy startups often lack substance when you look beneath the hood. As they spoke, Raymond positioned himself so his back was to the black woman, unconsciously creating a wall of exclusion. He didn't notice how Derek's eyes occasionally shifted to her, a flash of recognition crossing his face. Actually, Derek began, I've been following their work closely. Jasmine Washington's approach to... The terminal attendant's voice interrupted over the speaker. Attention passengers for the Stratton Financial chartered flight to LaGuardia. We are ready to begin boarding at Gate A3. Raymond drained his scotch and gathered his belongings. Time to go. Let's hope this trip isn't a complete waste of time. As he moved toward the gate, he was annoyed to see the black woman also standing, collecting a sleek briefcase and heading in the same direction. Surely she couldn't be boarding the same flight. Perhaps she was catching a different plane, departing from an adjacent gate. But as the attendant checked passengers through, Raymond's irritation grew. This woman, whoever she was indeed getting on his flight. His flight, paid for by Stratton Financial. This day was already proving more annoying than he'd anticipated. The Atlantic Aviation Terminal at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport existed in a different world from the main passenger terminals. Here, marble floors gleamed under soft lighting, leather seating areas were arranged for privacy, and the air carried subtle notes of sandalwood and freshly brewed gourmet coffee. It was a space designed for the ultra-wealthy and powerful, a place where convenience and luxury were assumed, never requested. Jasmine had arrived 30 minutes earlier, approaching the private check-in counter with quiet confidence. The young attendant behind the desk, a blonde woman named Meredith, according to her nameplate, had barely looked up from her computer. Name and destination, Meredith asked her, tone clipped and professional. Jasmine Washington, the New York flight. Meredith's fingers tapped across her keyboard, her expression unchanging. ID, please. Jasmine produced her driver's license. The attendant studied it for a moment longer than necessary before returning it with a slight frown. "Are you sure you're at the correct terminal? This is the private aviation section." The question was one Jasmine had heard countless times throughout her career in various forms. "Are you sure you belong here? Are you in the right place? Do you have the right credentials?" "I'm quite sure," Jasmine replied evenly. "I should be on the passenger manifest for the G650 departing for LaGuardia." Meredith's eyes narrowed slightly as she looked back at her screen. After a few more keystrokes, her expression shifted to one of surprise, quickly masked by professionalism. "Yes, I see it now. My apologies, Miss Washington." Her tone warmed by several degrees. "Would you like any refreshments while you wait? We have a selection of teas, coffee, or perhaps something stronger." "Just water, thank you." Jasmine moved to a quiet corner of the lounge, taking out her phone to check emails. She was accustomed to these moments, the initial dismissal, the surprise when her status was confirmed, the sudden shift to deference. They no longer bothered her. They simply registered as data points in the ongoing social experiment of being Jasmine Washington in spaces not designed for her. The lounge remained quiet for the next 15 minutes. Then the automatic doors slid open and Raymond Keller strode in as if he owned the building. His voice carried across the space as he announced himself to Meredith, who immediately straightened her posture and offered a dazzling smile that had been absent during Jasmine's check-in. "Yes, Mr. Keller, we've been expecting you. The Stratton jet is being prepared now. Would you care for some refreshments while you wait?" Jasmine observed him carefully over the rim of her water glass. Raymond Keller, whose investment committee would be evaluating Phoenix Innovation's proposal in just a few hours. His reputation preceded him old money traditional values, a euphemism Jasmine had learned meant resistant to change and diversity, and a notoriously tough negotiator. His dismissive attitude toward the staff told her everything she needed to know. People who treated service workers poorly rarely treated peers from different backgrounds any better. Jasmine made a mental note, continuing to watch as he settled into a leather armchair with his scotch. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call from her chief technology officer. "David, what's up?" she answered quietly. "Just wanted to go over the encryption demonstration one more time," David replied. "I've added some real-time visualization elements that should make the concept more accessible to non-technical investors." Jasmine kept her voice low but authoritative. "Perfect. Make sure the market projection slides reflect the updated DoD interest." Their security consultant confirmed they're impressed with the quantum-resistant properties. She felt Raymond's eyes on her as she spoke, evaluating, judging. It was a sensation she'd grown accustomed to, being surveilled in exclusive spaces, as if her presence required explanation. The lounge doors opened again, and Derek Foster entered. Jasmine knew him by reputation, one of the younger venture capitalists making waves, with his focus on diverse founding teams. They'd never officially met, but she'd seen him speak at several tech conferences. His fund, Elevation Capital, had an impressive track record of identifying unicorn startups early. She watched as Raymond immediately greeted Derek, positioning himself so his back created a wall between her and their conversation. A classic power move that brought a slight smile to Jasmine's lips. If Raymond only knew who he was, so deliberately excluding. The journalist Alicia Chen from Digital Frontiers arrived next. Jasmine had read her incisive coverage of tech industry diversity issues. Unlike many tech journalists who accepted corporate PR at face value, Alicia had a reputation for digging deeper, asking uncomfortable questions about representation and equity in Silicon Valley. Alicia glanced around the lounge, her eyes lingering on Jasmine with a flash of recognition before she was greeted by the terminal staff. Jasmine gave her a slight nod but made no move to introduce herself. Today, she was content to observe. The final arrival was a young man Jasmine recognized from industry events: Tyler Wilson, Raymond's protege at Stratton Financial. Barely 30, he had risen quickly through the ranks under Raymond's mentorship. Unlike his mentor, however, Tyler carried himself with less bombast. He nodded respectfully to the terminal staff and scanned the lounge with thoughtful eyes. When the boarding announcement came over, the speaker Jasmine gathered her things unhurriedly. She had heard Raymond's dismissive comments about trendy startups and dog and pony shows, had noted his body language and tone. All valuable intelligence for the negotiation ahead. As the small group moved toward Gate A, 3 Jasmine fell in step behind them, texting Marcus, her pilot, "I'm boarding now. Remember, our agreement, just treat me as a regular passenger for this flight. I want to observe without title." Marcus replied immediately, "Understood, Miss Washington." The private jet walkway was nothing like the commercial boarding bridges most passengers experienced. This was a short carpeted corridor leading directly to the sleek Gulfstream G650. At the entrance stood Brandon, the flight attendant Jasmine had personally hired 3 years ago. As Raymond pushed ahead to board first, making a show of his importance, Jasmine caught Brandon's eye. The imperceptible nod they exchanged confirmed their understanding. Today she was just another passenger. Stepping onto her own jet as an anonymous traveler, Jasmine prepared herself for what promised to be an illuminating flight. The interior of the Gulfstream G650 was a masterpiece of luxury aviation design. Butter-soft cream leather seats were arranged in conversational groupings rather than rows. Polished, burled walnut tables gleamed under recessed lighting, the carpet thick and soundproofing muffled footsteps to a whisper. Every surface, every detail spoke of craftsmanship and exclusivity. This was transportation designed for those accustomed to the finest things in life. Brandon, the flight attendant, stood at the entrance with a professional smile. "Welcome aboard. May I take your coat, Mr. Keller?" Raymond shrugged off his cashmere overcoat without a word, barely glancing at Brandon as he surveyed the cabin, clearly assessing which seat would best reflect his status. "The forward right seats offer the smoothest ride," Sir Brandon offered helpfully. "I know that," Raymond replied, curtly moving to claim the suggested location. Derek Foster entered next, thanking Brandon warmly as he handed over his light jacket. "Beautiful aircraft," he commented, genuinely appreciative. "Thank you, sir. We're quite proud of her," Brandon replied. Alicia Chen followed, notebook already in hand, taking in details with the keen eye of a journalist. "This is the latest G650 model, isn't it, with the extended range capability?" "Indeed it is, Miss Chen," Brandon confirmed. Jasmine entered last, nodding politely to Brandon, their familiar relationship completely disguised. She had specifically instructed her staff to maintain her anonymity on this flight, curious to observe Raymond and the others in an unguarded state. Brandon took her coat with the same professional courtesy he'd shown the other passengers, though Jasmine caught the nearly imperceptible twinkle in his eye. "Your seat is wherever you prefer, ma'am," he said simply. Raymond's head swiveled at this comment, his eyes narrowing slightly as Jasmine moved toward a seat in the main cabin area diagonally across from his position. She could feel his gaze tracking her, evaluating, judging. As she settled into her seat, Jasmine discreetly texted Marcus in the cockpit, "Everyone's boarded. Maintain protocol." Raymond leaned toward Brandon, who was preparing the pre-flight beverage service, his voice a stage whisper, clearly meant to be overheard. "Is she supposed to be on this flight?" "Yes, sir. All passengers today are authorized," Brandon replied smoothly. Raymond's jaw tightened visibly. "This is a Stratton financial charter. I know everyone who should be on board. The aircraft owner has authorization rights for all flights, sir, as per the charter agreement." Brandon explained, his professional demeanor never wavering. This information did nothing to improve Raymond's mood. He pulled out his phone furiously, typing what Jasmine presumed was a message to someone at Stratton demanding explanation. She allowed herself a small private smile as she opened her tablet to review her presentation. The seating arrangement had created an interesting dynamic. Raymond had chosen the forward right seat, clearly the power position in his mind. Derek had settled across the aisle to Raymond's left, while Alicia took a seat mid-cabin where she could observe everyone. Jasmine's position placed her diagonally, across from Raymond, close enough for conversation but with clear sightlines to everyone else. "Champagne before takeoff," Brandon offered, moving through the cabin with a tray of flutes. Scotch Raymond countered. The same as I had in the lounge. Of course, sir. As Brandon prepared the drinks, Raymond pulled out his phone again, his voice deliberately loud as he called his assistant. Margaret, I need to know why there's an unauthorized passenger on the Stratton jet. Yes, right now. Someone clearly dropped the ball on the manifest. Jasmine maintained her composure, scrolling through her presentation while absorbing every word. This behavior wasn't unusual in her experience. The immediate assumption that she didn't belong, that her presence required investigation and explanation. Across the cabin, she noticed Derek Foster watching the interaction with a slight frown. Their eyes met briefly, and Derek gave her a small, apologetic smile. Interesting. He seemed to recognize the dynamic at play. Tyler Wilson was the last to board, slightly breathless as if he'd been running. Sorry for the delay, he said to no one in particular. As he moved down the aisle, his eyes landed on Jasmine, and recognition flashed across his face. Miss Washington. Jasmine Washington. The cabin fell silent. Raymond's phone call abruptly ended as he turned to stare at Tyler, then at Jasmine. Tyler continued, genuine admiration in his voice. I saw your keynote at the Quantum Computing Summit last month. Your work on encryption algorithms is revolutionary. Jasmine offered him a warm smile. Thank you, Tyler. I remember seeing you at the conference. You asked an insightful question about implementation timelines. Tyler beamed at being remembered, while Raymond's expression cycled through confusion, disbelief, and the dawning realization that the woman he had been dismissing was actually Jasmine Washington, CEO of Phoenix Innovations, the very company he would be evaluating for investment that afternoon. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Marcus Howard. We're currently awaiting clearance for takeoff. We're expecting a slight delay due to weather patterns over the Atlantic. Should be about 15 minutes. In the meantime, please make yourselves comfortable, and Brandon will see to your needs. The announcement did nothing to break the tension that had settled over the cabin. Raymond was now openly staring at Jasmine, mentally recalibrating his approach. Alicia Chen was watching the entire scene with barely concealed interest, clearly sensing a story developing. So Raymond finally said, his tone forcibly conversational. You're Washington, the Phoenix Innovations woman. I am Jasmine, confirmed simply. Quite a coincidence finding you on the Stratton jet heading to our meeting. Is it? Jasmine replied, her tone neutral. Before the conversation could continue, Brandon returned with the drinks. Your Scotch, Mr. Keller. And for you, Miss Washington. Your usual sparkling water with lime. The your usual hung in the air, another piece of the puzzle falling into place for Raymond. What do you think about Raymond's behavior so far? Is he someone who deserves a reality check, or is he just having a bad day? Comment number 1 if you think he's being deliberately disrespectful, or number 2 if you think he's just caught off guard. And if you're enjoying this story of what happens when privilege meets its match, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this one. I'm curious, have you ever witnessed someone making assumptions about another person based solely on their appearance? The confrontation is about to heat up, but first, let's see what Raymond does with this new information about Jasmine. Tyler Wilson settled into the seat beside Derek Foster, still glancing occasionally at Jasmine with undisguised admiration. The young executive's recognition had shifted the atmosphere in the cabin dramatically. What Raymond had intended as a power play questioning Jasmine's presence had backfired, revealing his ignorance instead. Miss Washington, Tyler said, leaning slightly forward in his seat, your presentation on quantum-resistant algorithms at Stanford last quarter was brilliant. I've been following Phoenix Innovations since your Series B funding round. Raymond's jaw tightened noticeably. His protégé's respect for Jasmine was obvious, and in Raymond's worldview misplaced. He took a long sip of his scotch before interrupting. Tyler, I wasn't aware you had such an interest in startups. The way Raymond emphasized the last word made it sound like a questionable investment category rather than a legitimate business model. Phoenix is hardly a startup anymore, Mr. Keller, Tyler replied. They've maintained profitability for 11 consecutive quarters while expanding into 3 new markets. Alicia Chen, the journalist, had pulled out her notebook. Miss Washington, I'd love to schedule an interview with you about the challenges of scaling a Black woman-owned tech company in today's environment. Your perspective would be invaluable for a series I'm developing. Jasmine smiled politely. I'd be happy to discuss that another time, Miss Chen. Raymond cleared his throat loudly. Speaking of today's environment, I find it rather unusual that a CEO would happen to be on the same flight as potential investors just hours before a pitch meeting. Some might call that opportunistic. Some might, Jasmine agreed evenly. Others might call it coincidence. The cabin fell silent as Brandon moved through checking that all electronic devices were in airplane mode for takeoff. The pause gave Jasmine a moment to observe Raymond more carefully. His discomfort was evident in every tense line of his body, from his tightly gripped armrest to his overly straight posture. Here was a man unused to having his assumptions challenged, particularly by someone he'd already mentally categorized as subordinate. Captain Marcus's voice came over the intercom again. Ladies and gentlemen, we're still waiting on weather clearance. The delay has been extended to approximately 30 minutes. Feel free to use your electronic devices during this time. Raymond immediately reached for his phone, scrolling through emails with exaggerated focus. Jasmine returned to her presentation materials, reviewing key points for the upcoming meeting. The cabin settled into an uneasy quiet until Raymond received a text message that caused him to look up sharply at Jasmine. So, Miss Washington, he began, his tone deliberately casual. I've just been informed that Phoenix Innovations is seeking $100 million in funding for, what was it again, some sort of encryption technology? Quantum-resistant encryption, Jasmine corrected calmly. And yes, we're exploring strategic investment partnerships to accelerate global deployment. Raymond leaned forward, elbows on his knees.
Perhaps you could give us a preview of this revolutionary technology. After all, we're all stuck here together.
The request was a trap, and Jasmine knew it. Discussing proprietary technology in an unsecured environment, especially with a journalist present, would be deeply unprofessional. Raymond was testing her, expecting either an amateur overshare or an uncomfortable refusal. I think the formal presentation will be more appropriate, Jasmine replied smoothly, complete with NDAs and proper security protocols. Raymond's eyes narrowed slightly. Ah, yes, very prudent. Though one might wonder about the real-world applications of such high-level encryption. Couldn't it potentially aid criminal elements in hiding their activities? Actually, Derek interjected, with quantum computing advances threatening to break current encryption standards, quantum-resistant algorithms are essential for maintaining basic security for everything from banking to healthcare. Records. Raymond shot Derek an irritated glance before turning back to Jasmine. And how exactly did Phoenix Innovations develop this technology? It seems quite advanced for such a young company. The implication was clear. How could someone like her have created something so sophisticated without cutting corners, stealing intellectual property, or receiving unearned advantages through diversity initiatives? The same way most innovations happen, Mr. Keller, Jasmine answered. Brilliant minds working collaboratively over time, properly resourced and focused on solving significant problems. Raymond scoffed lightly. Of course. Though in my experience, truly groundbreaking technologies rarely emerge from unconventional backgrounds. The best innovations typically come from established institutions with proper pedigrees. Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly embarrassed by his mentor's thinly veiled prejudice. Alicia Chen's pen moved rapidly across her notebook. Is that so? Jasmine replied, maintaining her composure. I suppose historical examples like Edison, the Wright brothers, and Steve Jobs, none of whom completed college, would disagree. Raymond's face flushed slightly. Those are exceptional cases. And let's be honest, Miss Washington, the tech industry has a habit of inflating valuations for companies with diverse leadership to appear progressive. It's nothing personal. Actually, Mr. Keller, it sounds quite personal, Jasmine observed. The tension in the cabin had reached a breaking point. Derek and Tyler exchanged uncomfortable glances. Alicia had stopped writing to watch the exchange with undisguised interest. Raymond's phone buzzed with another text message. As he read it, his expression darkened further. The message appeared to confirm something that intensified his agitation. He looked up at Jasmine with renewed suspicion. "This aircraft," he said, slowly gesturing around the luxurious cabin. "Stratton charters it from Washington Holdings, LLC." He emphasized the name with raised eyebrows. "Any relation?" Jasmine held his gaze steadily. "Yes, I own this aircraft through my holding company." The revelation visibly destabilized Raymond. The woman he'd been condescending to not only owned the very jet he was traveling on, but would also be pitching to his investment committee in a matter of hours. The power dynamic he'd assumed was completely inverted. Instead of recalibrating his approach, however, Raymond doubled down, his voice rising with each word. "So, this entire situation is a setup. You deliberately arranged to have us on your private jet to what intimidate us before the meeting, create some sort of obligation." "Mr. Keller, I assure you," Jasmine began. "No," Raymond interrupted, standing abruptly. His face had turned an alarming shade of red, his composure completely abandoned. "This is completely inappropriate. This is a conflict of interest and a manipulation tactic." The other passengers watched in shocked silence as Raymond's outburst escalated. "Get off this plane," he shouted, pointing directly at Jasmine. "Your kind doesn't belong here. This is a professional business environment, not some diversity showcase." The slur hung in the air like a live grenade. Tyler's face drained of color. Derek sat up straighter, jaw clenched in visible anger. Alicia's pen froze mid-word. Brandon stepped forward from the galley, concern evident on his face, but Jasmine gave him a subtle gesture to stay back. Slowly, deliberately, she closed her tablet and stood up. The cabin was absolutely silent as she walked toward Raymond, stopping just a foot away from him. She leaned in close, her voice low but perfectly clear in the hushed cabin. "I own this jet, sir, and you've just lost your seat." Man yells, "Get off this plane," at black passenger. Then she whispers one line, "I own this jet." The silence that followed Jasmine's declaration was absolute. For several heartbeats, no one moved. Raymond stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, the reality of his situation slowly sinking in. That's absurd," he finally sputtered, though his voice had lost its authoritative edge. "This is the Stratton jet." "No, Mr. Keller," Jasmine replied calmly. "Stratton Financial charters this aircraft from Washington Holdings, LLC, which I established 5 years ago. If you check your company's contract, you'll find a clause reserving the owner's right to travel on any flight." Raymond's eyes darted around the cabin, searching for allies and finding none. "I want to see proof," he demanded. "Anyone can make claims." Without a word, Jasmine pressed the intercom button on the nearest panel. "Captain Howard, could you join us in the cabin for a moment, please?" Within seconds, the cockpit door opened and Captain Marcus Howard stepped out. Tall and distinguished in his uniform, he surveyed the scene with practiced calm. "Yes, Miss Washington. Mr. Keller has questions about the ownership of this aircraft," Jasmine explained. "Perhaps you could clarify." Marcus nodded. "Of course. This Gulfstream G650 is registered to Washington Holdings, LLC, with Miss Jasmine Washington as the sole principal. Stratton Financial has a long-term charter agreement with Miss Washington's company, but she retains ownership and priority access rights." As Marcus spoke, Jasmine's mind flashed back to where this jet had come from, a symbol of her journey from nothing to everything. 10 years earlier, she'd been working 18-hour days in a converted garage, developing the first version of her encryption algorithm. With student loans crushing her and venture capitalists repeatedly turning her down often after making inappropriate comments or propositions, Jasmine had nearly given up. Then came the defense contract that changed everything. Her technology, originally dismissed as theoretical and impractical by the old guard, had proven unbreakable in government testing. That first contract led to others, then to commercial applications, and finally to Phoenix Innovations, becoming the industry leader in data security. The Gulfstream had been her one significant personal indulgence, purchased not for luxury, but as a time-saving tool and a silent statement to a world that had tried repeatedly to exclude her. She'd named it Second Chance, a private joke about all the second chances she'd never been given and had to create for herself. Raymond's voice pulled her back to the present. This is ridiculous. Some kind of setup." "No setup, Mr. Keller," Jasmine said. "Just an unfortunate coincidence that has revealed your character quite effectively." Raymond seemed to realize the hole he'd dug for himself. His face, previously flushed with anger, now paled. There's been a misunderstanding. What you meant was perfectly clear," Jasmine interrupted, her voice firm but not unkind. "And I don't do business with people who don't see my humanity first." She turned to Marcus. "Captain, please arrange for Mr. Keller to disembark. I believe Stratton Financial can find him alternative transportation to New York." Raymond looked around desperately, his gaze landing on Tyler. Tyler explained to her that I was just concerned about protocol, about ethics. Tyler shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet his mentor's eyes. "Mr. Keller, I think it's best if you comply with Miss Washington's request." Alicia Chen hadn't written a word since Raymond's outburst, but her expression was one of intense focus, mentally recording every detail of the unfolding drama. Derek Foster watched with what appeared to be grudging respect for Jasmine's composed handling of the situation. "This is outrageous," Raymond protested, though his bluster was deflating by the second. "The investment meeting will proceed as scheduled," Jasmine finished for him. "Though I suspect the Stratton board might be interested in hearing about this interaction." Two members of the ground security team appeared at the cabin door, summoned discreetly by Brandon. "Mr. Keller, if you'll come with us, please," one of them said politely, but firmly. Cornered, Raymond made one last desperate attempt to salvage his position. "You're making a huge mistake. Our investment was your only chance at the capital you need. Phoenix will never get this opportunity again." Jasmine met his gaze steadily. "I don't do business with people who don't see my humanity first," she repeated. "That's not negotiable, Mr. Keller. Not for any amount of money." Raymond grabbed his briefcase, his movements stiff with humiliation. As he was escorted toward the door, he turned back one last time. "The board will hear about this," he threatened weakly. "I'm counting on it," Jasmine replied. The cabin door closed behind Raymond and the security team, leaving an atmosphere charged with stunned silence. Jasmine returned to her seat, outwardly calm, though her heart was racing. She hadn't planned for this confrontation, but neither would she shrink from it. Brandon approached with a glass of water. "Miss Washington, is there anything else you need?" "Thank you, Brandon. I think we're ready to depart when air traffic control gives us clearance." The others watched her with varying expressions, Tyler with embarrassment, Derek with newfound respect, and Alicia with undisguised journalistic interest. The power dynamic in the cabin had shifted irrevocably. After a moment, Tyler spoke up. "Miss Washington, I want to apologize for Mr. Keller's behavior. His views don't represent Stratton Financial as a whole." "Thank you, Tyler, but individual accountability matters. You aren't responsible for his actions," Jasmine replied. "That was remarkably handled," Derek commented. "Most people would have lost their composure." Jasmine smiled slightly. "Practice makes perfect, Mr. Foster. Unfortunately, I've had plenty of practice." Miss Washington, Alicia began, professional instincts clearly activated. "Would you be willing to comment on what just happened? This incident speaks volumes about the ongoing challenges faced by minority executives in tech and finance." "No comment at this time," Miss Chen, Jasmine replied, "though I believe you witnessed enough to draw your own conclusions." Captain Marcus returned to the cabin. "We've received clearance for takeoff, Miss Washington. We should arrive in New York on schedule." "Thank you, Marcus." As the jet began taxiing toward the runway, Jasmine allowed herself a moment to process what had just occurred. Raymond's outburst had been ugly but revelatory. Better to know now what kind of person she might have done business with, what kind of biases might have influenced Stratton's treatment of Phoenix Innovations. Her phone vibrated with an incoming text. It was from Terrell, her assistant, social media exploding. Keller live-streamed part of his rant before being removed from the jet. Video already has 50K views and climbing. Your move. Jasmine closed her eyes briefly. Of course, Raymond had live-streamed it, probably intending to document what he saw as her unprofessional behavior, never imagining he would instead broadcast his own prejudice to the world. The game had changed entirely. What had been a private confrontation was now a public incident with potential far-reaching consequences for both Phoenix Innovations and Stratton Financial. The investment meeting that afternoon would now take place in the shadow of this viral moment. As the jet accelerated down the runway, lifting smoothly into the sky, Jasmine made her decision. She would neither hide from this moment nor exploit it. She would simply continue, as she always had, with dignity, excellence, and an unwavering commitment to her vision. The jet banked gently toward New York, carrying her toward a meeting that had just become much more complicated and potentially much more significant than anyone could have anticipated. Once the Gulfstream reached cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign dinged off. The cabin remained unusually quiet, each passenger seemingly absorbed in private thoughts after the dramatic confrontation. Brandon moved efficiently through the space, serving refreshments and snacks with professional discretion. Jasmine used the time to respond to Terrell's message about the viral video. No response to video at this time. Proceed with meeting preparations as planned. Alert legal team to monitor situation. Almost immediately, her phone began buzzing with notifications. News outlets were picking up the story. Number Keller meltdown and number Jasmine owns the jet were trending hashtags. Phoenix Innovations stock had jumped 3 points in just 15 minutes. Terrell called, and Jasmine answered quietly. I'm gathering the executive team for an emergency meeting, he informed her. This is developing rapidly. Stratton's PR department has already issued a statement distancing the company from Keller's comments. That was fast, Jasmine remarked. They're in full damage control. The video is unambiguous. Keep me updated, but don't let this distract from our objectives today. The technology and business case haven't changed. After ending the call, Jasmine became aware that the others were watching her with undisguised curiosity. Alicia Chen finally broke the silence. Miss Washington, while I respect your no-comment position, I'd be remiss as a journalist not to point out that this incident will undoubtedly become a significant story about race and gender dynamics in corporate America. Would you consider sharing your perspective even off the record? Jasmine considered the request carefully. Alicia's publication, Digital Frontiers, was known for thoughtful coverage of tech industry issues rather than sensationalism. Miss Chen, what happened today is unfortunately not unusual. In my experience, though rarely so public. The story isn't about one man's outburst, it's about the systemic barriers that make such incidents commonplace for executives who look like me. Alicia nodded, taking notes. Would you say this is representative of your interactions in the venture capital and investment banking world? Not all, but enough to be statistically significant, Jasmine replied with a slight smile. For every Raymond Keller, there are others who evaluate ideas on merit. The challenge is determining which is which before investing time and resources. Derek Foster leaned forward. Miss Washington, as someone on the investment side, I find this conversation fascinating. Elevation Capital has been trying to address these biases in our evaluation process, but it's challenging to eliminate unconscious prejudice. It starts with acknowledging it exists, Jasmine said. Most investors don't shout their biases on live stream, but the subtle versions are just as damaging. Questions about my technical background, that male CEOs never receive suggestions that my success must be due to diversity, initiatives rather than innovation. Tyler Wilson had been unusually quiet since Raymond's departure. Now he spoke up, his expression troubled. I've witnessed it countless times in meetings with Raymond, but I've never intervened. That makes me complicit. Awareness is the first step toward change, Mr. Wilson, Jasmine replied. What will you do with that awareness now? The conversation was interrupted by Jasmine's phone ringing again, this time from Phoenix's chief marketing officer. Maya, what's happening? Jasmine answered. It's extraordinary, Maya replied, her voice excited. We've received 3 calls from competing investment firms in the last 20 minutes, all expressing interest in our funding round. The Keller video has apparently made us the most visible tech company in America today. That's unexpected, Jasmine said, carefully aware of the others listening. There's more. Vanguard Technologies just reached out. Their CEO wants to discuss potential acquisition at a 40% premium over our last valuation. Jasmine's pulse quickened, but her expression remained neutral. Vanguard was one of the largest tech conglomerates in the world, known for absorbing innovative startups at premium prices. Tell them we'll consider all offers after today's scheduled meeting, she instructed. And Maya, let's not get distracted by the noise. Our value was the same before that video as it is now. After ending the call, Jasmine noticed Derek watching her with newfound interest. Suddenly very popular, I take it, he asked with a knowing smile. Visibility has its advantages, she acknowledged. Though I would have preferred a different catalyst. Interesting ethical question, Derek mused. If Phoenix benefits financially from this incident, does that create a problematic incentive structure? Only if you assume I orchestrated it, Jasmine replied, which would require believing I somehow manipulated Raymond Keller into revealing deeply held prejudices on a live stream. Fair point, Derek conceded. Brandon approached with the satellite phone. Miss Washington, I have Marcus Ross from the Stratton Financial Board on the line for you. Jasmine accepted the phone, stepping toward the rear of the cabin for privacy. This is Jasmine Washington. Miss Washington, Marcus Ross, chairman of the board at Stratton. I want to personally apologize for Raymond Keller's inexcusable behavior. His comments do not reflect Stratton's values, and he has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending an investigation. I appreciate the call, Mr. Ross, Jasmine replied, though I find the timing interesting. Keller has been with Stratton for over 20 years. I doubt this was the first instance of such behavior. A pause. You're right, of course. We've received other complaints, though none so public. The board has been divided on how to address them. Today's incident removes any ambiguity. I see. We still very much want to proceed with our meeting this afternoon. I'll be attending personally, along with our CEO. The meeting remains on our schedule, Jasmine confirmed, though I should mention we've received interest from other potential partners in the last half hour. Understandable. We look forward to making our case. Ross paused. And Miss Washington. For what it's worth, many of us at Stratton have followed your work with great admiration. What you've built is extraordinary by any standard. After the call ended, Jasmine returned to her seat. The dynamics of the day had shifted dramatically. What had begun as a routine investment meeting was now a complex chess game with Phoenix Innovations suddenly in a position of unexpected leverage. Tyler approached hesitantly. Miss Washington, I've been Raymond's protege for 3 years. I've witnessed countless incidents like today's, though never so extreme. I've always told myself I was gathering experience, building connections that someday I'd make changes from within. He shook his head. I realize now how hollow that sounds. What will you do differently, Mr. Wilson? Jasmine asked. For starters, I'll be providing a full statement to Stratton's ethics committee about patterns of behavior I've witnessed. Beyond that, he hesitated. I'm reconsidering my place at a company that would elevate someone like Raymond to leadership. Alicia had been taking notes throughout these exchanges. Miss Washington, would you consider an on-the-record interview for a series I'm developing about the changing power dynamics in tech? Today's events seem emblematic of larger shifts occurring. Let's discuss that after the dust settles, Jasmine replied diplomatically. The captain's voice came over the intercom. We're beginning our descent into LaGuardia. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. As the jet began its descent toward New York, Jasmine gazed out the window at the city skyline emerging through scattered clouds. The events of the past hour had created an unexpected inflection point, not just for today's meeting, but potentially for Phoenix Innovation's entire trajectory. Her phone buzzed one more time with a text from Terrell Media waiting at terminal. Security in place. Car ready to take you directly to Stratton offices. Executive team sending real-time updates on stock price and incoming offers. Maya has prepared crisis comm statement if needed. Jasmine texted back, "This isn't a crisis, it's clarity." The jet touched down smoothly on the LaGuardia runway. Whatever challenges awaited in the coming hours, Jasmine Washington was ready to face them, just as she had faced every obstacle in her remarkable journey. The black Lincoln Navigator wound through Manhattan's crowded streets, carrying Jasmine towards Stratton Financial's headquarters. Through tinted windows, she caught glimpses of digital billboards in Times Square flashing headlines about the morning's incident. The story had exploded beyond tech and business circles into mainstream news, with snippets of Raymond's live-streamed tirade playing on loop. "Terrell, what's the latest?" she asked her assistant via speakerphone. "Phoenix stock up 17%, and still climbing," he reported. 6 additional investment firms have requested meetings. Vanguard has increased their acquisition offer to 45% above valuation. And Stratton, their stock is down 3%. The board issued a second statement announcing a comprehensive review of internal culture and diversity practices. Jasmine nodded thoughtfully. Any word on who will be attending the meeting? Full board presence confirmed. CEO Jennifer Hillard will lead instead of Keller. They've also invited their chief diversity officer, though he was hired only 2 months ago. "Convenient timing," Jasmine remarked dryly. As the Navigator pulled up to Stratton's gleaming tower on Park Avenue, Jasmine spotted a small group of reporters stationed near the entrance. Security personnel immediately moved to create a path for her. "Miss Washington, can we get a comment on the incident this morning?" a reporter called out. Jasmine paused briefly. "Today, I'm focused on business discussions that were scheduled weeks ago. The technology Phoenix Innovations has developed speaks for itself, regardless of who might question whether I belong in the room." Inside the building's vast marble lobby, Marcus Ross himself waited to greet her, an unusual courtesy for the chairman of the board. Tall and silver-haired, with the practiced charm of someone who had spent decades in financial boardrooms, Ross extended his hand. "Miss Washington, thank you for keeping our appointment despite this morning's unfortunate events." "My company's goals haven't changed, Mr. Ross." "Of course. Please follow me. We're using the executive boardroom today." As they rode the elevator to the 50th floor, Ross attempted small talk about the weather and New York traffic. Jasmine responded politely, but briefly maintaining professional composure while mentally preparing for what awaited. The boardroom was imposing a long table of polished mahogany, surrounded by leather chairs with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering spectacular views of Central Park. Already seated were 11 people, including Jennifer Hillard, Stratton's CEO, various board members, and Tyler Wilson, looking distinctly uncomfortable. All conversation ceased when Jasmine entered. Every eye tracked her movement as she took her place at the presentation end of the table. The tension in the room was palpable, a mixture of embarrassment, damage control calculations, and genuine curiosity about how she would handle the situation. Jennifer Hillard spoke first. "Miss Washington, on behalf of everyone at Stratton Financial, I want to express our deepest apologies for Mr. Keller's reprehensible behavior this morning. There is absolutely no place for such attitudes in our organization." Jasmine nodded acknowledgement. "Thank you, Miss Hillard. I appreciate the sentiment, though. I'm curious, how long has Raymond Keller held his position at Stratton?" The question hung in the air uncomfortably. 23 years, Marcus Ross finally answered. "And during those 23 years, how many companies led by black women has Stratton invested in?" Glances were exchanged around the table. The chief diversity officer, a young man with a nervously straightened tie, consulted his tablet. "I believe none, Miss Washington." "I see," Jasmine said calmly. "So perhaps we should address the elephant in the room before proceeding with my presentation." She opened her tablet and projected a single slide onto the wall screen. Not the expected company financials or technical specifications, but a screenshot from Raymond's live stream. His face contorted in anger as he pointed at her. This morning, your executive vice president demonstrated precisely why Phoenix Innovations has succeeded despite the investment community's systemic biases. When faced with someone who didn't fit his concept of what a tech CEO should look like, he didn't question his assumptions, he questioned my legitimacy. The room remained silent as Jasmine continued. The irony is that the very qualities that have made Phoenix successful are those that come from navigating spaces where we don't automatically belong. Innovation born from necessity, resilience developed through overcoming barriers, and the ability to see opportunities others miss because they're blinded by their preconceptions. Jennifer Hillard leaned forward. Miss Washington, we completely agree that Mr. Keller's behavior was unacceptable. That's why immediate action was taken. But we're here today to discuss a potential partnership based on the merits of your technology and business model. Are we? Jasmine raised an eyebrow. Because until 3 hours ago, Raymond Keller was leading Stratton's evaluation of Phoenix Innovations. How can I be confident his biases haven't already influenced your assessment? Marcus Ross cleared his throat. A fair question. Which is why we've decided to restart the evaluation process from scratch with a new team led by Miss Hillard personally. An encouraging first step, Jasmine acknowledged. And yet I can't help wondering if this new approach comes from genuine recognition of the problem or simply from fear of public relations damage. Tyler Wilson suddenly spoke up. It's the latter. All eyes turned to him in surprise. I've been in this company for 3 years, and I've witnessed dozens of instances where qualified founders from underrepresented backgrounds received extra scrutiny or were passed over entirely. The culture runs deeper than one man's outburst. The chief diversity officer looked alarmed. Jennifer Hillard's expression hardened. Tyler, this isn't the appropriate forum. Actually, it's exactly the appropriate forum, Tyler interrupted. We're discussing a potential 9-figure investment in a company led by a black woman immediately after our EVP was caught on video telling her she doesn't belong. If we can't be honest about our institutional biases now, when can we? A tense silence followed. Jasmine studied the faces around the table, reading the complex emotions, discomfort, defensiveness, and in some cases, genuine reflection. Here's what I propose, she finally said. I came prepared to present Phoenix Innovations' quantum encryption technology, market position, and growth projections. I'll proceed with that presentation as planned. But I'll add a new condition to any potential partnership. Stratton must implement measurable changes to address the systemic biases Mr. Wilson has identified, with transparent metrics and accountability mechanisms. Jennifer Hillard and Marcus Ross exchanged glances. That seems reasonable, Ross said cautiously. Though implementing such changes takes time. So does developing revolutionary encryption technology, Jasmine countered. Yet here we are. With that, she shifted to her prepared presentation. For the next 45 minutes, Jasmine walked the board through Phoenix's proprietary quantum-resistant encryption algorithms, their applications across industries, and the company's impressive growth trajectory. Throughout, she noted how each innovation had initially been dismissed by mainstream investors before proving its value often to those same skeptics' eventual benefit. As she concluded, Jasmine displayed a slide showing competing investment offers that had come in during the flight to New York with company names redacted but figures clearly visible. As you can see, this morning's events have created considerable market interest in Phoenix. Vanguard Technologies has made an acquisition offer that values us substantially above our last funding round. I share this not as leverage, but as context for our discussion moving forward. Jennifer Hillard leaned forward. Miss Washington, your technology is indeed impressive, revolutionary even. Stratton would be privileged to partner with Phoenix Innovations. To demonstrate our commitment, we're prepared to offer terms 15% more favorable than our originally planned proposal. And regarding the institutional changes I mentioned, Jasmine asked, The board is prepared to establish a dedicated committee with your input on its composition to address diversity and inclusion within our investment evaluation process, Marcus Ross replied, with quarterly public reporting on progress. Jasmine considered this for a moment. The offer was substantially better than what Phoenix had initially hoped for, both financially and in terms of institutional impact. Yet, something felt incomplete. "Thank you for your offer. It's generous and thoughtful," she said finally. "However, I choose my business partners as carefully as I choose who flies on my jet. I'll need to consult with my executive team before making a decision." Jennifer Hillard couldn't fully mask her surprise. Few entrepreneurs walked away from the table when Stratton improved its terms. "Of course, we understand this is a significant decision." As the meeting concluded, handshakes were exchanged and pleasantries observed. Tyler Wilson approached Jasmine last. "What you did today will reverberate through this company for years," he said quietly. "Regardless of whether you ultimately partner with Stratton, you've started a conversation that can't be silenced." "And what about you, Mr. Wilson?" Jasmine asked. "Where do you go from here?" Tyler smiled ruefully. "I submitted my resignation an hour ago. I'm considering my options." "Phoenix is always looking for people who recognize when change is needed," Jasmine replied. "Send your resume to Terrell." As Jasmine left the Stratton building, a larger crowd of reporters had gathered. This time, she approached them directly. "I've just concluded a productive meeting with Stratton Financial's leadership," she stated clearly. Today's events highlight why diversity in tech and finance isn't just a moral imperative, it's a business necessity. Companies that fail to recognize talent in all its forms will increasingly find themselves at a competitive disadvantage. Back in the Navigator heading toward the airport, Jasmine called a virtual meeting with her executive team to discuss the day's developments and Stratton's offer. As Manhattan's skyline receded behind her, she felt a quiet certainty that whatever decision they reached, Phoenix Innovations had just entered a new chapter, one where their success would create ripples far beyond technology. 6 months later, Jasmine stood at a podium in the airy atrium of Phoenix Innovations' new headquarters in Atlanta. Sunlight streamed through the glass ceiling, illuminating hundreds of employees, investors, and media representatives gathered for the building's official opening ceremony. The space represented far more than just a corporate milestone. Designed by a black female architect and constructed by a diverse coalition of contractors, the headquarters embodied Phoenix's commitment to creating opportunity at every level. Solar panels and innovative climate systems made it one of the most energy-efficient buildings in the Southeast. Community spaces on the ground floor would host tech education programs for underserved local youth. 6 months ago, Jasmine began her voice carrying clearly through the atrium, a moment that was intended to diminish, turned into a catalyst for transformation. Not just for Phoenix Innovations, but for the tech industry at large. The audience listened intently, many already familiar with the story that had become legend in tech and business circles. The video of Raymond Keller's outburst had accumulated over 20 million views. Case studies about the incident and its aftermath were now being taught in business schools. "I've always believed that the most powerful response to discrimination isn't anger, though anger is certainly justified. It's excellence, it's success. It's creating systems and spaces where everyone belongs." Jasmine gestured to the building around them. "This headquarters represents that vision, a place built on merit, innovation, and the radical idea that brilliant minds come in all forms." In the months following the confrontation with Raymond Keller, Phoenix Innovations' trajectory had accelerated dramatically. After careful consideration, Jasmine and her team had declined Stratton Financial's investment offer, instead accepting a partnership with Elevation Capital, Derek Foster's firm, which had offered comparable terms without the institutional baggage. The company's stock value had more than doubled. The quantum encryption technology had been successfully deployed across multiple industries, with government contracts alone accounting for over $1 billion in revenue. Phoenix had grown from 300 employees to nearly 800, with one of the most diverse technical teams in the industry. Raymond Keller's fall had been as swift as it was public. After being placed on administrative leave, he had resigned from Stratton rather than face an internal investigation. His live-streamed tirade had made him toxic in financial circles, leading to his resignation from multiple corporate boards. His most recent public appearance had been at a congressional hearing on discrimination in financial services as an object lesson rather than an expert witness. Stratton Financial had undergone its own transformation, though, whether from genuine conviction or market pressure remained debated. Jennifer Hillard had implemented sweeping changes to the company's investment evaluation processes, with Tyler Wilson's allegations serving as a roadmap for reform. The firm had subsequently increased investments in minority-led companies by over 300%, though they were still playing catch-up to more progressive competitors. Today, as we open this new chapter for Phoenix Innovations, Jasmine continued, I'm proud to announce 2 initiatives that will extend our impact beyond our own walls. She outlined the Phoenix Foundation, a new nonprofit funded with $50 million from company profits dedicated to supporting Black entrepreneurs in tech. The foundation would provide not just capital but mentorship, network access, and the institutional support often lacking for founders from underrepresented backgrounds. Additionally, Jasmine announced we're launching Phoenix Academy, a free coding and business skills program for underserved communities across America. The first campuses will open next month in Atlanta, Detroit, and Oakland. Applause rippled through the atrium. In the front row, Jasmine spotted familiar faces, her original team, who had believed in her vision from the garage days. Derek Foster, now a close advisor. Alicia Chen, whose award-winning article series, Disrupting Discrimination, had sparked a national conversation. And Tyler Wilson, who had joined Phoenix 6 months ago to lead their diversity and inclusion initiatives. After the ceremony, as attendees mingled during the reception, Jasmine found herself approached by a young Black woman barely out of college who had recently joined Phoenix's engineering team. Miss Washington, the young woman said, her voice slightly nervous, I just wanted to thank you, watching how you handled that situation on the plane. It showed me that I don't have to choose between my dignity and my success, that I can demand both. Jasmine smiled warmly. What's your name? Zora. Zora Thompson. Well, Zora, remember this, the most powerful response to people who say you don't belong is to create spaces where everyone belongs and then excel within them. Your success becomes a pathway for others. Later that evening, Jasmine boarded her private jet for a business trip to Singapore, where Phoenix was opening its first Asian office. The aircraft had been refurbished, its interior redesigned to reflect the company's aesthetic, but she had kept the name Second Chance. Brandon greeted her with a warm smile.
Good evening, Miss Washington. We're expecting a smooth flight to Singapore.
As Jasmine settled into her seat, another passenger boarded a nervous-looking middle-aged man in a business suit, clearly flying private for the first time. He glanced around uncertainly until his eyes landed on Jasmine. Hello, she said, warmly extending her hand. I'm Jasmine Washington. The man shook her hand, visibly relaxing. James Marlowe. I'm heading to the tech conference in Singapore. So am I, Jasmine replied. First time flying private. That obvious, huh? He laughed self-consciously. My company just arranged it. I'm not sure of the protocols. This is my jet, Jasmine explained, and everyone belongs here. The only protocol is mutual respect. As the Gulfstream taxied toward the runway, Jasmine gazed out the window at the illuminated Phoenix Innovations logo atop their new headquarters, visible even from this distance. 6 months ago, a moment of confrontation had revealed hard truths about the world she navigated. Today, that moment had been transformed into something more powerful, a catalyst for change that extended far beyond one woman, one company, or one industry. The jet accelerated down the runway and lifted into the night sky, carrying her forward into whatever challenges and opportunities awaited beyond the horizon. Jasmine's journey teaches us several powerful lessons about confronting discrimination. First, true strength lies not in reacting with anger, but in responding with dignity and composure. When faced with Raymond's outburst, Jasmine didn't lower herself to his level. She maintained her professionalism while firmly establishing boundaries. Second, success is the most powerful response to prejudice. Jasmine didn't just win the moment, she transformed it into an opportunity that advanced her company's mission and created pathways for others. Third, belonging isn't something others grant you. It's something you claim for yourself. Jasmine didn't beg for a seat at the table. She owned the table and decided who deserved to sit there. Fourth, systemic change requires both individual courage and institutional accountability. Jasmine's stand created ripples that forced an entire industry to confront its biases. Finally, our response to discrimination defines not just our individual journey, but the path for those who follow. By creating spaces where everyone belongs, Jasmine turned her personal triumph into a collective victory. What discriminatory situation have you witnessed or experienced, and how did you respond? Could you have handled it differently? Knowing what you know now, share your stories in the comments below. If this tale of triumph over discrimination inspired you, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who needs this message today. Your support helps us continue bringing these powerful stories to light. Thank you for joining us. And remember, sometimes the most effective way to change the world is by refusing to let others define your worth or limit your possibilities.